Hey everyone, buckle up because we're diving headfirst into the world of Bitcoin today. You've been following the recent market swings, a smart move, especially with this new Satoshi Nakamoto documentary on the horizon.
Yeah.
It feels like the crypto world is holding its breath, waiting to see if the mystery of Bitcoin's creator finally gets solved.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting time to be watching Bitcoin, that's for sure. This potential unveiling, combined with some pretty big moves in the market lately.
Well, it makes you wonder what's going on behind the scenes.
Speaking of behind the scenes, let's talk about this Bitcoin whale making headlines. You know, the one who just moved $3.6 million worth of BTC. It's not exactly an everyday transaction. Right, and what makes this even more interesting is that we're talking about an OG investor here. Someone who mined their Bitcoin back in 2009, just as Bitcoin was getting started. This isn't just someone chasing a quick profit. They've been in the game from the very beginning.
Okay, so someone who really understands Bitcoin just made a big move. Why does that matter so much?
Well, it's all about context, right? And sort of reading the tea leaves, so to speak. There's a tweet from Arkham suggesting this whale might be moving their Bitcoin to an exchange, which usually means one thing. They're getting ready to sell.
And a sell-off that big,
Yeah.
that could send ripples through the whole market.
Right. Exactly. Think about it. If you were at an auction and suddenly saw a major collector selling off a huge chunk of their prized possessions, wouldn't you hesitate before placing your own bid? It's about psychology and how these big players, these whales, can influence the actions of everyone else. Sometimes a single whale's movements can signal a shift in the entire market's tide.
So it's like they're playing a giant game of strategy, these whales, trying to make the smartest moves without tipping their hand.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, do they know something the rest of us don't? Are they anticipating a market dip, or is there some other factor driving their decision?
Fascinating stuff. Now, you know Bitcoin is often painted as this independent, rebellious force in the financial world, right? But one of the articles you shared highlights how it's actually quite sensitive to something you might not expect. U.S. employment data. What's the connection there?
It all boils down to risk appetite. See, Bitcoin is often seen as a risk-on asset. When investors feel good about the economy, when they have a high-risk appetite, they're more likely to take a chance on assets like Bitcoin.
So good economic news, like a strong jobs report, would generally give Bitcoin a boost.
That's the general idea, and it seems like that's what we're seeing now. The recent U.S. jobs report exceeded expectations, suggesting the economy is more resilient than some anticipated. This positive news likely boosted investors' risk appetite, giving Bitcoin's price a little bump. But it's not always as simple as good news equals higher Bitcoin price. There are specific indicators within that employment data that savvy investors are watching closely. For example, wage growth. If wages are rising rapidly, it can actually fuel inflation fears, which might make investors step back from riskier assets like Bitcoin.
It's like a delicate dance between economic indicators and investor sentiment.
Exactly. And then there's the whole question of the Federal Reserve and what they'll do next. Will they continue to raise interest rates to combat inflation, or are we heading for a soft landing?
Okay, let's unpack that term, soft landing. It sounds pretty appealing, but what does it actually mean in this context?
It's the holy grail of central banking. A soft landing is when the Federal Reserve manages to bring inflation under control without triggering a recession. Imagine trying to gently land a plane on a runway during a storm. That's the kind of precision and skill we're talking about.
Sounds tricky. So how does Bitcoin fit into this whole landing scenario?
Well, investors are constantly trying to anticipate the Fed's next move, right? The CME FedWatch tool, which tracks market expectations for interest rates, currently shows a higher probability of a smaller rate cut in November than we saw predicted last month.
So what does that mean for Bitcoin? Good news or bad news?
It's actually a bit of a head-scratcher. Some analysts see it as a sign that the Fed is confident about a soft landing, which could be good news for risk-on assets like Bitcoin. But others are more cautious, suggesting that this smaller rate cut could indicate ongoing economic uncertainty. If investors start getting nervous, they might pull back from Bitcoin, seeking safety in more established assets.
It's like everyone's trying to interpret the Fed's every move, every word, every facial expression, for clues about the future.
Exactly. And remember, this is just one piece of a very complex puzzle. Global events, regulatory changes, even technological advancements within the crypto space itself, all of these factors can impact Bitcoin's price and future prospects.
It's definitely a lot to keep track of. Speaking of big players, one of the articles you shared mentioned the top Bitcoin holders. And of course, right at the top, shrouded in mystery, it's Satoshi Nakamoto.
Ah, yes, the enigmatic creator of Bitcoin. It's estimated that Satoshi holds around 1.1 million Bitcoin. That's over 5% of the total supply. At today's prices, we're talking about a staggering $67 billion.
Wow. Talk about a digital fortune. But seriously, how did one person manage to accumulate that much Bitcoin, especially back in the early days?
You have to remember, back when Bitcoin was brand new, very few people were paying attention, let alone mining it. And the rewards for mining a block were significantly higher then.
So Satoshi, being one of the first on the scene, was able to mine a ton of Bitcoin before it became mainstream.
Exactly. It was like striking digital gold. Back then, you could mine Bitcoin on a regular computer. It wasn't the energy-intensive process it is today. Satoshi and maybe a few others were able to mine a huge chunk of the total supply before anyone else caught on.
It's like discovering a hidden treasure chest before anyone else knows it exists.
And that treasure chest has become a focal point for speculation and intrigue. Will Satoshi's Bitcoin ever move? If so, what kind of impact could it have on the market? It's a question that keeps even the most seasoned crypto analysts up at night.
The suspense is real. Now, before we get too caught up in the world of Bitcoin billionaires, let's talk about something a bit more down to earth, something that affects everyone in the crypto space, no matter how big or small their holdings are.
You're talking about security, aren't you?
You read my mind. We came across a pretty unsettling article about a hacker who managed to swipe $38 million in crypto from an investment firm. It's a stark reminder that while the potential of crypto is huge, so are the risks.
Absolutely. It's like the old saying, with great power comes great responsibility. And in the world of crypto, where fortunes can be made and lost with a few keystrokes, security is absolutely paramount.
So we were just talking about the importance of security in the crypto world. It really makes you think, what measures are these big players, these whales and early adopters, taking to protect their digital fortunes?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, you can bet they're not relying on basic two-factor authentication and hoping for the best, right? We're talking about sophisticated security protocols, cold storage solutions, maybe even teams of cybersecurity experts working around the clock.
It's like something out of a spy movie. Multiple layers of encryption, biometric security measures, secret underground bunkers.
You're not far off. For these individuals and institutions holding massive amounts of crypto, security is paramount. And it's not just about protecting themselves from hackers, it's also about mitigating internal risks, ensuring the integrity of their systems, and planning for every possible contingency.
It's a whole different ballgame when you're dealing with that level of wealth. But on the flip side, imagine the peace of mind that comes with knowing your digital assets are virtually impenetrable.
There's a certain sense of security that comes with decentralization, too. Unlike traditional banks, where a single breach could expose all of your funds, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are distributed across a vast network. It makes them much more resistant to attacks, but not entirely immune, as we've seen with that recent hack.
Right, there's always a risk, no matter how secure the system.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of risks, we've talked a lot about the potential upsides of Bitcoin, but what about the potential downsides? What are some of the challenges that could hinder its growth or adoption?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is scalability. As more people use Bitcoin, the network can become congested, leading to slower transaction times and higher fees. This is something developers are actively working on, though, with solutions like the Lightning Network aiming to improve Bitcoin's transaction throughput.
So it's like trying to fit a growing city's worth of traffic onto the same highway system. You need to find ways to expand and improve the infrastructure.
Precisely. And then there's the issue of volatility. Bitcoin's price can fluctuate wildly, making it difficult for businesses to adopt as a form of payment and for individuals to use for everyday transactions.
That's true. It's hard to budget for your groceries when the price of Bitcoin could swing 10% in a day.
Exactly. That's why stability is so crucial for wider adoption. Some people believe that as the market matures and more institutional investors enter the space, we'll see less volatility. But for now, it remains a key challenge.
Makes sense. Now, before we run out of time, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the potential impact of Satoshi Nakamoto's Bitcoin holdings. You mentioned that Satoshi owns over 5% of the total Bitcoin supply. What would happen if, hypothetically, they decided to sell a significant portion of those holdings?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's difficult to predict with absolute certainty, but it would undoubtedly have a major impact on the market. Even the rumor of Satoshi selling could be enough to trigger a sell-off, as others rush to avoid potential losses.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The fear of a price drop could actually cause a price drop.
Exactly. It all comes back to psychology and market sentiment. Now, it's important to note that Satoshi has never sold any of their Bitcoin, at least not that we know of. There's been a lot of speculation, but so far, those coins have remained untouched.
It's almost like a silent testament to the power of long-term thinking. While others chase quick profits, Satoshi's Bitcoin sits there, a reminder that sometimes the best investment strategy is patience and conviction.
It's a compelling thought, isn't it? And it speaks to the broader philosophical questions that Bitcoin raises about wealth, ownership, and the future of money itself.
Deep thoughts for a Tuesday afternoon. But seriously, this whole discussion about Satoshi's holdings highlights a fundamental aspect of Bitcoin. It's finite. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin in existence.
And that scarcity is a key part of its appeal. Unlike traditional currencies, which can be printed endlessly by governments, Bitcoin has a fixed supply. This limited supply, combined with growing demand, is what many believe will drive its value up over time.
So it's like a digital gold rush with everyone vying for a piece of a finite pie.
That's a great analogy. And as more people jump into the game, that scarcity becomes even more pronounced.
It's enough to make you want to dust off your old mining rig.
You might need a bit more than an old computer these days. Bitcoin mining has become a highly competitive industry, with specialized hardware and massive server farms vying for a piece of the pie.
Right, it's not as simple as it used to be. But even if we're not all mining Bitcoin in our basements, the fact that it's still being mined, that new blocks are being added to the blockchain, is a testament to its ongoing growth and development.
Absolutely. It's a living, breathing ecosystem that's constantly evolving. And that's part of what makes it so fascinating to watch. Who knows what the future holds for Bitcoin?
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? It's a world of possibilities, full of potential and uncertainty in equal measure.
And as we navigate this uncharted territory, it's important to stay informed, ask questions, and approach this space with a healthy dose of curiosity and skepticism.
Well said. Now, speaking of navigating uncharted territory, our exploration of the Bitcoin world wouldn't be complete without addressing the elephant in the room.
The upcoming documentary about Satoshi Nakamoto.
You got it. This documentary is generating a ton of buzz. Everyone wants to know, will it finally reveal the identity of Bitcoin's mysterious creator?
It's the question that's captivated the crypto world for over a decade. And honestly, I have no idea what to expect. Part of me hopes they do reveal Satoshi's identity just to finally put an end to the speculation.
Right. It's like waiting for the season finale of a show you've been hooked on for years. But then again, there's a certain allure to the mystery, isn't there?
Absolutely. Satoshi's anonymity has become a core part of the Bitcoin narrative. It reinforces the idea that this technology is bigger than any one person, that it belongs to everyone and no one at the same time.
It's like a digital origin story, complete with its own enigmatic hero.
Exactly. And whether or not this documentary reveals their true identity, the legend of Satoshi Nakamoto will continue to inspire and intrigue for years to come.
No doubt about that. Well, folks, we've covered a lot of ground today, from whale watching and market psychology to the challenges of scalability and the mystery of Satoshi Nakamoto. It's been quite a journey. But our deep dive isn't over yet. When we come back, we'll be exploring the broader impact of Bitcoin and blockchain technology, examining its potential to revolutionize not just finance, but countless other industries as well. Don't touch that dial. And we're back, folks, ready to venture beyond the realm of Bitcoin itself and into the wider world that this revolutionary technology is busy building.
It's an exciting frontier out there. We've talked about Bitcoin's potential to disrupt traditional finance, but the applications of blockchain technology extend far beyond just currency.
That's what's got me so fired up. It's like we're witnessing the birth of something truly groundbreaking, with ripples that could reach every corner of our lives.
You're hitting on something crucial here. This isn't just about, geeks playing with digital tokens. This is about reimagining the very fabric of how we interact and transact in the world.
Okay, so paint me a picture. What are some of the real-world use cases for blockchain that go beyond buying and selling Bitcoin?
Well, let's take supply chains, for example. Right now, we have these incredibly complex networks of manufacturers, distributors, retailers, all trying to track goods across the globe. Blockchain can bring a whole new level of transparency and accountability to this process.
So instead of relying on paper trails and hoping for the best, we could have an immutable record of every step a product takes, from factory floor to doorstep.
Exactly. And we're not just talking about fracking luxury goods here. Imagine the impact on food safety, for example. With blockchain, you could trace the origin of your produce in seconds, ensuring it meets the highest standards every step of the way.
That's huge. especially in a world grappling with food security and sustainability issues.
Absolutely. And that's just scratching the surface. Blockchain has the potential to revolutionize voting systems, protect intellectual property, even empower artists and creators in unprecedented ways.
It's like the possibilities are truly limitless. But with all this talk about revolutionizing industries, let's address the elephant in the room. What about the ethical implications?
You're right. We can't just focus on the shiny new tech without considering the human element. One concern is the potential for bias in these systems. If the data fed into a blockchain is flawed or discriminatory, the outcomes will reflect that.
So it's crucial that we develop these technologies with a focus on fairness and inclusivity from the ground up.
Absolutely. And then there's the question of accessibility. Will blockchain empower the marginalized or exacerbate existing inequalities? These are questions we need to grapple with head on.
It's a reminder that technology is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill. It all comes back to the choices we make as a society.
Precisely. And that's why conversations like this are so important. We need to be having open, honest dialogues about the potential pitfalls, as well as the transformative possibilities of blockchain technology.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some key takeaways you'd like our listeners to remember?
First off, don't underestimate the power of curiosity. Keep asking questions, keep exploring, and don't be afraid to dive deep into the technical details, as well as the broader implications of this technology.
Sound advice. And what about for those who might be feeling a little overwhelmed by all this talk of digital currencies and decentralized networks?
Remember, this technology is still in its infancy. There's a learning curve, for sure, but don't let that discourage you. Start small, educate yourself, and don't be afraid to experiment. There are countless resources available online and within your communities.
It's about taking that first step and then another and another. And who knows, you might just find yourself at the forefront of the next technological revolution.
And most importantly, stay engaged. This isn't just about passive observation. The future of blockchain technology will be shaped by those who participate in the conversation, who ask tough questions, and who strive to build a more equitable and decentralized future.
Beautifully said. Well, folks, there you have it. A whirlwind tour through the world of Bitcoin, whale watching, market trends, security concerns, and the transformative potential of blockchain technology. It's been an amazing journey, and we hope you've enjoyed diving deep with us today. Remember, knowledge is power, and by staying curious and engaged, you can be a part of shaping the future of this exciting and ever-evolving space. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and as always, thanks for listening.